Okay, so today we're looking at MLA documentation. So when we document sources for any essay that we're writing, we have a two-part system. So within the text of your paper, you need to indicate any idea that came from someone other than yourself. So that means every sentence that has information from a source, whether you're paraphrasing it or quoting from that source, has to indicate what source it's from. That might be through a parenthetical citation, it might be an attributive tag, or you might even have both in your sentence, depending on the nature of your source and how you've worded your sentence. Now, keep in mind that that part of the citation must include the first element of the works cited entry. So the second part of your system is the works cited entry that comes at the end of your paper. That is the complete information for every source cited in your paper. That will indicate the whole publication information, and that's everything that your reader will need to go find that source. But of course, we don't want to interrupt our text every time with all that information, and if we were citing every sentence, that would get really, really long. And I know you guys are always worried about word count, but that is not the way to do it, right? So we want to interrupt our essay as briefly as possible. We must give the first element of our works cited entry, which will either be the name of an author, or it will be the title or a shortened version of the title of the article. So it will never be a website, just a hint, never be a website. Now, you can give more information, but you have to give that element of the works cited entry. So for example, if you have an attributive tag that says what publication this article was printed in, you would still need to include the last name that was the first element of the works cited somewhere in there. So when you're looking at your in-text citations, again, first part of the works cited entry. If it's a long title, you can shorten it. You will not include a web address, you will not include a URL, you will not include any kind of periodical title. So we have examples here for a last name and a page number, or a title and a page number. Now, if you use attributive tags in your paper, so remember that is including a reference to the source that's within the sentence, it's not just at the end. You can give more information than you've provided in your parenthetical citation. So notice in our first example, we wanted to specify that the study was published in the Harvard Medical Journal. We think that's impressive. We want our readers to know that. So we've included that in our sentence, but we still have to give the author's last name at the end and the page number. If we're naming the author in the sentence, then we don't need to include the author again at the end. Notice that the first time we mention an author, we give both first and last name. We don't use any titles. After the first time we use that author, we only give their last name. That does not include parenthetical citation. So if you cite from an author that you only include their name in the parenthetical citation, it would be last name only. And then if you mention them in a sentence, the first time you mention them in the body of your paper, that's where you include their full name the first time. If you have one or two authors, you include one or two names. So if you have two authors, it's name and name. If you have more than two, you can use the abbreviation et al, et space al period, and that just means and others. Now in your actual works cited entry, you will have a list of all the authors, even if it's 7 or 8 different names, but in your paper, you only name the first one. Now, when do you have to use page numbers? This one gets complicated because we have so many internet sources. You want to always be as specific as possible, so your works cited entry gives your readers the full publication information so they can go find the source, but your parenthetical citations should be very specific as to where that one piece of information is from. So maybe this quotation is on the first page of that source, and then later in your paper you have a reference to some statistics that are found in the middle of the source, and your readers should be able to be directed exactly to where in that source your information comes from. So a quick reference is if you have page range in your works cited entry, then you should have pages in your citations. Don't leave the page range off your works cited just so you don't have to include pages in your parenthetical citations, but if you have a page range, then yes, you should have page numbers. If the work is only 1 page long, then you don't need to give page numbers because you can't narrow it down any further. If you're summarizing the entire work, so you would be saying, oh yes, this is on pages 1 through 300 of the book, or 1 through 30 of the article, or whatever, then you would not be needing to narrow it down further either. Sometimes your works don't have numbered pages. So make sure that you're as specific as possible. If you have a PDF, you do have page numbers. So if you have a PDF and you don't see numbers on the pages, then use the numbers of the PDF. If sometimes a web article will have numbered parts, it will have sections, or it will have paragraph numbers, make sure that you look for that and use that. Sometimes your instructors will require you to use paragraph numbers and number them yourself if necessary. So please keep that in mind. Also notice that if you are looking at a website, you want to cite as specific an article as possible. So if you're looking at an article on NASA.com, you want to cite the title of that article as an article on a website, not the entire website. If you cite NASA.com, that is not very helpful because there are so many articles on NASA.com, right? So you would want to tell us, oh, this is from the article, The Future of Space Travel from NASA.com, or Challenger Landing, or whatever article you're looking at. And then if you're looking at more than one page, you're getting information from several pages on NASA.com, the best thing to do would be to cite all of those. Now, your second part is going to be your works cited page. So how is that going to look? I recommend starting a new page by holding down Control and hitting Enter. That creates a page break, and that way, as you edit your paper, if you make your paper longer or shorter, your works cited will still always start at the top of a new page. If you just hit enter until you start a new page, but then you go back and you shorten your essay or you lengthen your essay, it will move that works cited up or down. Whereas if you start on a new page, it will always start on a new page. It should be in the same document, so your running header will continue to number the pages in order. Same font as the rest of your essay, double spaced like your essay. Just like your essay title, the works cited title should be centered with no special formatting. And your entries should have a hanging indentation. You're going to alphabetize those entries by the first word. You will not use numbers or bullets or any of those things. So this is what that looks like. Notice that hanging indentation means all of our first lines are flush with the left margin, and if an entry goes onto more than one line, then subsequent lines are indented. By sticking the first line out there, that sticks the first element of the works cited there, so it will be easy for someone to scan. So they've read your paper and the citation says this is attributed to Reed, so they can scan, where's Reed? Oh, here's Reed. And here's the full publication information. Notice that works without an author start with the title, and these are alphabetized with the other works. So we don't start over to include the titles or have separate sections. If missing goes after Kavanaugh and before Reed, then that title goes between Kavanaugh and Reed. Also notice that if you have a word like A or the at the beginning of a title, it's not included in alphabetizing. Now this work right here would be the same place, even if it just started with the D, but in this case you wouldn't include the A. In your citation, you will have the author or authors, if you know them, the title of a specific work. Then you have information for the container, if it was published in a periodical, part of a website, part of a book, the date, page range, and if you have digital location information. So this is an example of some work, of an entire book, a section of that book, so a work from the anthology, and then an online textbook. If you're looking at a journal article, for journal articles, we give the volume and issue number, the year, a page range. If you find it in a database, you give the database name. Now this has a URL. I would leave that out for the database because it's practically useless to cite something that's behind, or to have a URL for something that's behind a paywall. The next example is a magazine. Notice how in a magazine you give the date, the publication date, but not the volume and issue. And the last one is a website, and we do have that web address. It's fairly brief, so it's useful to include a web address if it's brief enough, but if it's very long and, like I said, behind a paywall, then it's practically useless to include. Now, I didn't stop on those, so maybe you're like, hey, I didn't memorize that. You know what? That's okay. You can cite almost anything. There are ways to cite graphic novels or sculptures. Did you know you could cite a sculpture? There are ways to cite YouTube videos or comments on a discussion post, on a forum post somewhere online. There is a way. So make sure that you are looking in your reference book. A lot of our students use Writer's Reference. Sometimes we have another textbook that we give for your reference book. Sometimes you'll need to go to the library and find a reference book that does MLA format, or you can try the internet, although you want to be careful, make sure that you have a reliable site for that. So you can look it up and say, oh, well, I need to cite this tweet. I'm analyzing the language in this tweet from the president. I want to cite it. Go look it up. If you are looking at some kinds of sources, you might end up have to do a hybrid. So maybe it's a political cartoon, but it's published online. So you have to do a hybrid for political cartoon and online. But there's a way to cite everything. If you have questions about your particular source, please feel free to let me know. And like I always say, you don't have to memorize this. No one expects you to memorize the citation for different kinds of sources. We expect you to know where to go to find that information and how to verify that you're doing it the correct way.